We have 3 of the 4 presenters. Glover had an emergency and could not be with us, and we are going to try to get have him participate in another program so that you can all hear about him and his work. So stay tuned for that. And we are gonna hold questions till the end. So if you do have a question for a specific artist, maybe you can write it down or put it in your phone or something while we're doing the presentations. So we're gonna start with Andrew. Andrew Thornton is a professional fine artist trained at the School of Visual Arts. He works in painting, collage, metal, polymer clay, and resin. His work explores identity through magical realism and fantasy. Andrew is the co-owner and creative director of Allegory Gallery in Ligonier, Pennsylvania. When he's not creating art, he is working on Star Cottage Studio, his studio in a 100-year-old former schoolhouse. His next project is opening a jewelry gallery in Johnstown called Butcher Block Gallery. Welcome, Andrew. So if you just hit that, you can adjust it.
Good morning, everybody. Who's ready for some generational trauma this morning? Firstly, I wanted to thank SNAG for this opportunity to share my work in this early career artist talk. You all are probably wondering, or a little bit suspicious about why I'm up here, because I'm not the fresh-faced, young, youthful person that you'd probably think as an early career artist. And you might be saying to yourself, there's nothing really early about this middle-aged, half-Asian homosexual up here, but you probably are a little bit right. I'm not this person who's new necessarily, but after a weekend of presentations and conversations, I realized that I'm probably one of the least people with least amount of experience in the metals field here. Many of you are leaders in this industry and inspire me greatly. There's some serious imposter syndrome happening up here, and when I was asked to be a presenter, I was like, do you really want me to? I was like, you know, there's other people, right? But I think it's important to show all of the spectrum of early, middle, and late career artists. So before I get into my work, I thought I would share some of my personal history and build a little context. As an artist, I feel as though we are chroniclers of the times and the world that we live in, and each of us is shaped by those events in our lives. Normally, I don't like to talk about my work too much, and it's not necessarily because I don't have anything to say. It's because the thing that intrigues me the most is what happens next. For the most part, I sit alone in my studio, and I have plenty of conversations with myself. Is this good? Is this bad? Is this really bad? And sometimes I chat with my internet friends, but for the most part, I'm in my studio by myself with my thoughts. And I see some of you, shaking your head a little bit. So you know what I mean. And through my work, I seek to understand the world and myself, and it can be confusing. It can be a confusing world that we live in. And this is how I make sense of it. And while I have plenty to say about my work, I also acknowledge that once the work is put out into the world, it takes on a new life of its very own, and the audience who sees my work will have a vastly different world experience than me, and that how they see my piece and interpret my original intention and design meaning may be different. And I think that's okay. That's a good thing, actually. It's a conversation then. As an artist, it can sometimes feel like you're shouting into the wind, and you never know if anyone will hear you and what you have to say will resonate with someone. But every now and then, you'll have an opportunity like this where you have a captive audience and you can't leave. So I'm going to crack that nut and show you what I've got. All right. It's not a hostage situation, so it's okay. All right. So I'll start the slides. And I have a lot of slides, but I'm not going to talk about them one at a time. So don't worry. If you saw like the number, there's like 100 slides and people are like, oh my word, I got stuff to do. All right. I grew up, I thought it would be like this, we'll start from the very beginning. I grew up under the Florida sun. I'm the son of a salt of the earth, good old boy from the Ozarks. He is very different from me and could never understand a child who felt too much and felt too deeply and would paint on the walls and drag dolls around the yard. He met my mother while he was in the military. Both of them were survivors of extreme poverty. My dad's parents lived through the Great Depression. Their first house was a log cabin that they built themselves with a dirt floor and an outhouse. Our cottage, by the way, has an outhouse, so it's like not that much has changed, but we do have running water at our home, so don't get too worried. And they're experts at taking very little and turning it into a lot. They never wasted anything. And my grandma was an extreme crafter. Were she alive today, she would be an Etsy superstar. She always, oh, and this is the log cabin, and that's my Uncle Jerry. And that's my grandma. My mother is also is one of 12 children, and they shared a nipa hut, which is constructed of bamboo. And I don't know if you're familiar with how the family dynamics are there, but instead of like going off on your own, you just like add on to the house, or you all just stay in the same house. So it's a very different culturally than it is here. When I was growing up, we did not have a lot of money for store-bought entertainments. I probably should say that I did not really know that we were poor until I was older. When I look back, I can see how they struggled to keep our family going. The lack of ready-made entertainments forced us to create our own amusements. And there was an old red barn behind our house, and we found a stack of Paco Fun. Do y'all remember that magazine? Maybe not. It's like we found vintage, probably antique copies of it. And it was all about turning trash into treasure. So both my mom and my grandma were avid crafters and encouraged us to make stuff, especially if we could sell it in a yard sale or a church bazaar to make extra money. This lack taught us creativity and imagination. A cardboard box could be a castle or a treasure chest. It also taught us resourcefulness, appreciation for the handmade, a work ethic, and a sense of early entrepreneurship. One of the things that has influenced me the most as a person and as an artist is that as a child of an immigrant, as being a child of an immigrant. I grew up hearing fantastical stories of giant birds carrying bad little children away, massive clams that could bite your foot off, and trees that would curse you if you cut them down. Where my mom grew up, superstition was very much real, and the impossible could be, was very much alive and well. And there's tons of stories about, and you'll have to, if you're interested in that, there's a lot of different stories about people swinging from the trees and stealing children. And when we were kids, we were very westernized. And so we would say things like, no, that couldn't happen. But you know what? Giant monkey-eating eagles are a real thing. And they do steal children from time to time. And my mom had this camcorder from the 90s. And it was very shaky, and there's a lot of pictures of blurry sand. And then all of a sudden, there was this bird tethered to the porch, and we're like, and then it just went back to blurry sand pictures and all these random people you don't know standing around awkwardly. And we're like, what's that giant bird? But anyway, so my mother, a person of color, had to overcome so much adversity. She dealt with racism and xenophobia, all while trying to navigate a new country and raising a family. She also had to learn a new language. Being a child of an immigrant is being both part of something and also being set apart. One of the biggest influences, another one of the big influences, is when my brother disappeared. He went AWOL from the Navy and went missing for 22 years. We did not know if he was alive or well or dead. And you all thought I was joking about having abandonment issues. So my parents come from a generation where we did not talk about things. We did not talk about our feelings. We did not talk about my brother for fear of triggering my mother. We did not talk about how I felt or how I did not feel like I felt like I fit in. I was too brown for the white kids and too white for the brown kids. And we definitely did not talk about the fact that I was gay. And these things would further, the things we didn't really talk about would divide us further. And I think it's one of those things where when you look at your family in hindsight, you can see how there are cracks and there are certain events that will either bring you together or will tear you apart. And a lot of that that happened with my brother was something that deeply impacted my life and my experiences for many years to come. And it still does. So eventually I left Florida behind and went to art school in New York City. I went to the School of Visual Arts and studied painting and mixed media. I learned a lot, and I also accumulated a lot of debt. I appreciated how Erica kind of touched on that the other day, because it's a very real thing that I don't think a lot of artists talk about, you know, the very real mechanics of being able to do what you do and love to do what you do. And so I tried really hard to break into the art world, and I tried everything that I could, but I just couldn't get my foot in the door. And I think a lot of people experience that when you have an oversaturated market, which is very steeped in nepotism and politics and who has money and who doesn't have money. And also systematic racism and things like that. Fun times, right? So around that time, I started helping my family do trade shows. My sister created a company that makes and manufactures beads, and I thought I should learn more about what I was trying to sell. So I taught myself how to bead. And shortly afterwards, I started writing for books and magazines on how to make jewelry. And then while it was different from what I went to school for, it was still related. It's still kind of creative. So a few years later, I did a little sojourn in Asheville and helped raise my niece. And a few years later, I moved back to New York, where I met the man who would become my husband. Hi, William. We went to Pennsylvania on a vacation. And in between trade shows, we took some time to meet his family and see where he grew up. And by the end of the trip, we decided to stay. I mean, like, if you can't really make it in New York and you're like struggling, it's like, what's the point? And I think there was this point where somebody was like, where do you live? And at that point, I was doing 26 trade shows a year. And I was like, basically, I live in Holiday Inn because I'm home like 2 days a week. And I was always on the road. So it didn't really matter where we lived. So we decided to move to Pennsylvania. I got cancer, I got better, and then we opened a store. Cliff notes, y'all, cliff notes. That is like a lot of time all compressed. So when we decided to open the store, I took my business plan to the bank, and the bank manager laughed in my face. And he said, you're going to fail in 6 months. And I said, okay. And so just as a side note, we're going into our 13th year in a couple months, and that bank is closed. So I think that's also one of those things where when you grow up with very little, you learn to do a lot with very little. And so we took our initial investment and turn that into a business that supports both me and William. And so we had always dreamed of having our own small business. And it was kind of like a someday, one day, maybe sort of goal. And then the opportunity kind of arose. We sell beads, art, and jewelry at Allegory Gallery. And you should follow us on Facebook and Instagram. I probably shouldn't plug that, but oh wow, y'all captive audience. So I think we do more than just create a place to buy things. William and I both come from places of adversity where we didn't always feel welcome. So it was really important to us to create a space that was inclusive and where people felt like they were seen and heard and could come together. That was super important to us. So while we were doing this and building this business, I devoted all of my energy to basically establishing the business and helping other artists tell their stories. And I was focused on the DIY aspect of making jewelry. So it's very, while metalsmiths and fine jewelers and everybody kind of run in the same direction, we're all in different lanes. And sometimes those lanes cross over, but they're very distinctive lanes. And so it's a little bit odd coming to that, you know. I would say that my relationship with metal at that point was casual. I dabbled in classes here and there, and I took classes from teachers that we hosted, but most of it was stuff that you could do with like a butane torch. So a lot of the stuff we do at the store and that I did in my work previously, and still to this day, is beading. And a lot of the stuff I also learned from books and magazines. And so there are some pictures, and I kind of feel like and I've had conversations with Jenny about this, where I kind of feel like I have multiple personalities, where I have to do beading and I have to be an entertainer, I have to be an educator, I have to make cute things to sell things to make money. And then you make it's like a different way of, you have different, everybody's like, ooh. And that's how we felt too. But so there's a lot of different levels of access. So we do things that you can buy for 5 cents, and we do things that you can buy for 5,000. So it's just a lot of different kind of things like that. So we turned this business and we were growing steadily year after year, and then 2020 happened. And like most self-employed entrepreneurs, we were caught off guard, and we asked ourselves, how will we survive? You know, in the first early days, you couldn't even leave your house to go and pick up shipping materials. So it was hard, but it also forced us to stop and reflect on what was most important to us. And I had always wanted to go back to school and further my arts education, but sometimes you reach a point in your life when the day-to-day obligations and responsibilities make that more challenging. I mean, people do it, but it was just not something that I could really do, at least without abandoning and making sacrifices in other areas. So I started researching craft schools that were nearby, and we live in the middle of a triangle. And actually, if you look at a map of Pennsylvania, there's a blank spot kind of in the middle, and we live in the middle of it. And to our west is Contemporary Craft in Pittsburgh, and to the east is Center for Metal Arts in Johnstown. And to here in the south is Touchstone Center for Crafts. And this is actually a bit of a full circle moment, because when I decided to pursue taking and being serious about my education and expanding upon it, one of the first classes I took was with Erica at the Center for Metal Arts. And let's see, so I dabbled. Oh, and we also got married, and that was fun to do in a pandemic. But Instead of asking for like a blender, because we've been together at that point for 12 years, we asked for donations to GoFundMe. And so with those funds, we bought a building. And that's my studio, Star Cottage Studio. That's the schoolhouse. Some of you may have passed it on your way here, I think. And then, so dabble, 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 dabble. And then there's Erica, striking. The way that she puts her pieces together with rivets and small metal fabrication techniques seemed like a good entry point in the blacksmithing and forging world. The world of blacksmithing was completely new territory, or so I thought. And the more I learned, the more I could see the connections. In old school apprenticeships, they started having students make their own tools. And I can see the value in this. There's a freedom in learning about how to make your own tools. And there's a gift in deepening one's relationship with metal in all its forms. And I have learned something in each of my classes. As I look around this room, I see many familiar faces. And I want to thank all of them for sharing their knowledge. And I thank them for enriching my life and empowering me not only to be a better artist, but to be a better person too. I carry all of these teachers with me as I journey forth. I've been lucky to have found an amazing group of teachers, mentors, and friends. And I have been also lucky to have the support of William and our extended network, the Society of Inclusive Blacksmiths, and the SNAG Educational Endowment Scholarship, who have helped me to fund these career goals. I took this class in Katie Jones. So, and then this is from Glenn. And you can see my terrible first sleeve. And so, as I've also continued my journey through this, I've also been acquiring tools. So like I said, I'm very early career, even though I've been working in the arts and have been established in books and magazines and have been in probably 30 different books and different magazines. I don't, I'm new to metalsmithing. So it's been a journey to acquire tools. There's Glenn, and I took his Japanese raising class, which is also on the calendar this year at Touchstone, so you should take that. And Glenn Hoare has a class also, so you should take that as well. So basically the slides that I'm going to show for the rest of this are from different classes that I've taken. And I've taken a lot of classes. And I really feel very lucky to have this opportunity. I know that this isn't something that everybody has a chance to do. But after taking so many different classes, the nomination committee here at Touchstone asked me to be on the board, and I was appointed to the board. And I completed my first year, and then they asked me to run for the board. So that was nice and has taught me a lot of different things. I don't know if I can make that play or not. And so that has also helped show me a different aspect and to refine my understanding of the business practices behind running an arts organization. It's a different kind of user experience when you're coming out from a different angle. And so it's super educational. Thanks, Lindsay. And so as I go into my work, it seems like there's those different parts of my brain. And as Brianne had mentioned, a lot of my work deals with understanding identity through magical realism. And I actually started this series of self-portraits when I was artist in residence at Contemporary Craft. And there's us at Falling Water. But so I've taken a lot of different classes, and there's a lot of different things that I want to pursue. But there are also things that I learned that I'm not going to do. I think that's a natural kind of thing where it's like, it might seem like my focus is scattered, but I also feel like I'm sitting down to a great feast and that I'm learning what my favorite dishes are. And yeah, so I've tried a lot of different things and I enjoy them. It's been fun. It's been a really amazing experience the last couple of years. It hasn't always been easy and we've had to make a lot of sacrifices, and it's been particularly challenging after the pandemic, having a small business and keeping that afloat, but you know, you make do. And the last and most recent project is that we're in the process of opening a new gallery space called Butcher Block Gallery. And that should open sometime this summer, fingers crossed. But most importantly, what I'm excited for is what comes next and what I can bring to all these experiences and educational opportunities together and filter them together through my own viewpoint and make something that is wholly and completely my own. So in closing, I would like to present you with 3 gifts. Oh, more pictures of classes, but it's never too late. When we heal ourselves, we heal the world, and all things are possible. And then just so you know, in case you were curious, after 22 years of being missing, my brother did come back. And while that, you know, it is what it is, it's good and all that. But anyways, thank you so much.
Oops. All right. Can come up. Willow Zietman is an artist blacksmith working out of Lunenburg.
Lunenburg. Some people pronounce it Lunenburg, but they're wrong.
Okay, Lunenburg, Massachusetts. She uses traditional forging and sculpting techniques to bring life and whimsy to traditionally forged ironwork, drawing inspiration from the animals on her farm and the fairy tales that she reads to her daughter. Welcome, Willow.
Hi.
This with that. I think this button. Okay, good. So hi, everyone. What you just heard is kind of me trying to make sense of what I do with steel. Yeah, I don't have all the photos of my work because technical problems, but that's also kind of, I feel like, a metaphor for my artistic journey. Things going wrong and then going, oh crap, I'll do something else. Yeah, okay, wait, why am I doing it? And then sort of rationalizing it after the fact, figuring out why it was that my brain did what it did. And you know, so you're gonna just see the photos that I have that aren't connected to the internet, which is kind of interesting. That's my name up there, and this is my daughter. And the reason I have a picture of her with a sword is because in the past, like, honestly, I want to say like 3 months, I've realized that the thing that fascinates me in terms of forms that I make is cute stuff that can kill you. I really love the fact that as humans, we can kind of form connections with anyone or anything. Like, did you all see that film about the strange man who went and had like a 2-year-long love affair with an octopus or something? No? Yes? Oh, well, it's a thing that humans can do, apparently. But I just kind of am always interested in how we overcome prejudice and how we are able to sort of grow empathy with people or even, you know, creatures or even just, you know, stuffy toys that we might have found terrifying a little bit, beforehand. Like, for example, being a mom and small children with swords. So that's kind of what I do. Most of what I do isn't actually artistic. Most of what I do is just architectural, blacksmithing, get metal hot, hit it with a hammer, drill a couple holes in someone's house, shove it into their house, get paid. And that's nice. And I really kind of just fell into that because I was originally, I went to Hampshire College for environmental sociology and Mandarin Chinese. And I lived in China for 2 years, and I was an adjunct, I guess technically an adjunct professor of media studies and English, which I just kind of fell into. That was what I was going to do with my life. And then I came home to the US for like a couple months, fell in love, and sort of there were all my plans for my life gone. And, here I was in a long-term relationship with, we're now married, she's, my wife. And I had to figure out what to do. It's like, oh crap, oh no, I really don't know what to do now, And I just realized that I'd taken a few blacksmithing classes when I was a teenager. Maybe I should go and do some blacksmithing. So I ended up just TAing for a couple people at the steel yard in Providence. And I eventually ended up becoming a teacher, and I ended up kind of making my own weird little studio out of a converted office. It's like a 10 by 10 office in an old machine shop next to one of the places that I teach. And I just ended up kind of doing architectural work and, things like the occasional knife. But whenever I let my brain just kind of free to make whatever it wants to, that's not a railing and not another railing or yet another darn railing, I realized that I really started to make cute things. Like, oh, look, a knife, it can kill you, but it has a cutesy dragon on it. Or, well, this is a door knocker, so it's slightly more abstract, but oh my goodness, an owl that has killed a mouse, but it's kind of cute. And it's a door knocker. So that's the kind of thing that I've ended up getting into. Oh, look, and then there were more railings along the way. This is actually, I think, the same railing, but that's okay. And then, yeah, I've since upgraded from my little 10 by 10 converted office space and kept on doing railings. And I kept on finding myself making cute stuff like little dragon faces that I've been making for a while. Little owls, little dragons. I call this photo Hindu. I don't know if that's a word in the US. It's the word for when a woman is about to get married. So she gets all her friends together and they go out and they have a party. I don't know. I was born in England, grew up half here, half there. Language is confusing, even between the same language. But, this is an owl looking very grumpy because it's the designated driver. And then all of the little dragons, and these are each one piece, just having a wonderful time. And oh, here's my daughter in front of a gate that I made for a pool. Oh, and my dog, who is also very cute and can kill you. Well, she would, but she's actually too gentle for that. And yet more railings, yet more leafy things. People seem to really like architectural work with leafy things. I think people should go in for architectural work with like cute stuff on it personally, like cute little faces, but this just kind of seems to be what I do. Here's an, what do you call it? Sundial, equatorial sundial that I made, which was actually really fun because it was all CNC water jet cut and tons of math. This was like a year of math that went into this thing. It was really exciting, and it actually has a little model of a Copernican model of the solar system inside of it in the little window, and you can turn a crank and it goes round and round. And also the guy who commissioned it is a total nerd, so I put the Millennium Falcon in there because of course. And it's, it's all fun, it's all interesting, it's all a challenge, but and I think that's all the photos I have. But basically, the things I keep on coming back to are just like cute things that can kill you. And at first I was really kind of making pieces like entire dragons out of a single block of steel with legs and wings. And I was the demonstrator for the New England Blacksmiths fall conference right before the pandemic. And it was really fun. And I was fascinated by the idea of just one block of metal becoming something utterly crazy and different, to the point where you could almost not tell or that there was a disconnect between chunk of metal and dragon, or chunk of metal and spider, which was an exercise in trying to get myself to be not afraid of spiders. I just took some steel and folded it and welded it and made a spider. And I wish I had a picture of it, but I don't. That's okay. And I was thinking to myself, why am I doing this? Why do I keep on coming back to these like little chunks of metal that change entirely and kind of are the same material, but also they're totally different in function? And then I was like, oh, wait, maybe it's because I'm trans, which I am. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. It's been a long time. I forget sometimes, but I think that's kind of what that's about. And then recently with the whole cute things that can kill you thing, I've basically been reading a lot of the news. I don't know if you can all bear to read the news anymore, but there's a lot of like anti-trans legislation going on in places, and just like lots of horrible people being horrible. And so I guess I'm kind of working through my feelings about like, how can people be scared of people who, I haven't actually put this into words yet, but basically it's just thinking about like, how do we overcome prejudice? How do we get straight cis people to understand in some way what it means to be trans? And then also sort of working through my feelings about like, I'm very cute. Why would someone want to deny me healthcare in Florida, or like whatever it might be? Or why would someone want to not let my wife get married to me, or like, because, gay marriage and everything. And I think that's what I'm kind of working through with making cute things that are also, in theory, dangerous. And that's kind of all I have on those thoughts. I don't really know. As you can see, I'm very prepared. And yeah, I don't know. I hope that's all right. I hope you found it interesting. I'm going to go into it.
Well, while we're waiting for our next presenter, maybe we can, if anyone has questions for Andrew or Willow. Take some questions now. Anyone have questions? Yeah.
Both presentations were fantastic. I don't think you can just say that.
Very fun.
No, you're not. I can feel it like now it's not hurt. It's a little more like you're really good. The two are as into it, so it's really bad seeing seeing the variety of people that are also involved with your, and so yeah. I'll now.
Yeah, question. Yeah. This is the last slide. Is it in the wrong order? Oh, I'm on the last slide. Ah, sorry. Right, say your last name. Nasatir. Yes. Nothing. We were just doing some questions because you weren't here. It's all good. All right. Let me see. All right, so for our last presentation, we're gonna welcome Sachi Nasatir, who lives and works in New Orleans, Louisiana, with their dog Dallas, who we see here. Yes. You just hit this button.
All right. So that's Dallas. I don't remember when that's from, but that's when I got my first anvil. It was a Fisher, 110 pounds. Okay. My name is Sachi, and as with the other speakers here today, I was included to talk to you about myself and I guess what it means for me to be an early career or emerging artist. I feel like everyone's pretty nervous, especially if you've not done this before, or maybe if you've done it a lot, but nevertheless, this is my first time, so I'm very nervous. And what's gonna get referenced a lot is also imposter syndrome, because it's thematic, I think, for us all. And the destruction that these universal feelings of doubt can have on recognizing opportunity and actualizing drive. And though I may not be proof of conquering these instincts completely, I feel I am an example of how important it is to challenge them within ourselves. And it's an honor to have been invited here today, to be grouped among so many other talented individuals and to have gotten to meet a lot of wonderful people. Okay, oh wait, not yet. So my story is simple. I've been interested in aesthetics my whole life, but most of my attempts at centering a career around crafts have been relatively half-assed until recently. Since I was young, I amassed a heavy collection of rusty objects that I would find on the street, and I first started trying to make things out of them by heating up old nails with a butane torch and hammering them on my cement stoop in an attempt to make rings. It was a successful, though arduous and frustrating process, to say the least, but I enjoyed myself and wanted to learn more. I then began furthering my experiments in metalwork around 2014 when I took a beginner's jewelry class at a studio in New Orleans called Metal One. I quickly got interested in working on pieces larger than the earring or pendant projects presented to us, and at that time, that ended up being belt buckles for me. And this is the first one I ever made. It was a shark mouth with a poppy flower popping out of it. I started producing a lot on my own after the course finished, and within the year, I moved to Texas to attend welding school and pursue an associate's degree in blacksmithing at Austin Community College. At the beginning of my time at ACC, a lot of the required courses I had to take were full, so I continued to play around with non-ferrous materials, specifically techniques in casting, engraving, etching, chasing and repoussé, etc. I was really interested in textures and experimented a lot in replicating the beautiful gradient of patterns found in the natural world. These are some more belt buckles. This was like a stump, tree growth rings. This is bark, attempt at replicating bark. This is some like an alligator scale pattern. These are some, one side is like rings of different scales or patterns, and then this is yeah, more belt buckles. I daydreamed about draping material over bodies, and that tendency towards slightly excessive body wear is really manifested in other sorts of pieces, including these were sort of Chinese finger cracker-esque rings that I developed, and big cuffs and more rings, and then more rings, and then yeah, this is a necklace. I cast all those individual pieces, trying to replicate shark tooths. It was exhaustive, and I don't know how many pieces are part of it. For me, it is always a sort of ironic exercise to look back and notice how my experiments in small metals were always visually more raw and organic than anything I've designed in steel. And as was my MO at the time, I didn't really sell many of these, but I mostly traded them or gifted them away. Self-promotion has always been difficult. And instead, while in school, I worked a variety of different jobs, including as a valet, a dishwasher, a gardener, and as a whole animal butcher in a fancy butcher shop. As my classes and focuses turned more to steel and ironwork, I learned how to forge and manipulate steel through the basic techniques of punching, upsetting, drifting, tapering, etc., welding. We had plenty of access to the facilities at school, but it was never enough. And I set up a small metals work table in my bedroom and a forging area in my yard so I could keep working on projects outside of school. I couldn't really find pictures of my bedroom, but there's some. And that was my little yard setup. And with this and in school, I was able to make some other things. This was a woven tabletop with, I got a piece of glass put over it in school. And this was a fun little door knocker thing. And these were some candle holders. More than anything at the time, I focused on making tools so that when school was over, I would be able to keep up my practice. I was very lucky enough to study under many professors at ACC, but most specifically Haley Woodward. He is and was an incredibly patient and curious educator with a deep desire to spread the love of blacksmithing. He always met me early before class so I could keep working on my personal projects. He hired me also for things, and he guided me specifically in all my tool making. And this is like just a little picture of some stuff I was able to walk away with after school. Haley also teaches classes everywhere. If anyone ever has the opportunity, he's not just at ACC. Okay, so I graduated in 2018 with a plethora of new skills under my belt and a great desire to keep learning and keep creating. Since then, I've worked in a variety of fabrication studios and blacksmithing shops and dabbled in and out of making things on my own for both commission and consignment. Rachel David herself has been a huge mentor and supporter of mine, and I was lucky enough to land some part-time employment with her quickly out of school. Over the last 5-ish years, it has evolved into quite the working relationship and friendship, and I'm forever grateful for her. She is actually the reason that I'm here today, and is always pushing me to put myself out there. So thank you, Rachel. Fast forward some years to 2020. Year everything changed for us all. I found myself remarkably unemployed, but still with a shop and a lot of time on my hands. It was an intimidating time, but also an exploratory one. And oddly enough, like I went from working for other people to only working for myself. I started working for myself, but without my usual income from other jobs. I struggled with the lack of financial security that the craft industry provides, which is maybe relatable. I mostly took welding jobs rather than more aesthetically driven pursuits, but I was still able to produce some things that I was proud of. These are some little like wall mounted plant holders I made. These are my first set of serving ware that I ever came up with. These are a couple different coat rack designs. This was a commissioned light fixture. That was my first light fixture or electrical one that I'd ever made. And that was very fun and exciting for me. I didn't take many other pictures of it, unfortunately. These are just some little shelf brackets. This was a plant hanger. And so when I was first learning how to render and cut on the CNC plasma cutter. These are some spoons, serving wares. And oh, fuck. Okay, that was it. Okay, soon enough, I switched trajectories again. And for the first time in over 8-ish years, I moved on to a different field that was no longer metal related, but it paid me much better. It was a tough decision, but I always knew I would come back to metal work, and I just needed a mental break from the stress being your own boss can accrue. And so as recently as this winter, I sat myself down again to try the right way to create a hopefully functioning business for myself. And here I am now, unsure of what the future might hold, but spending my days trying to create a collection of objects based on the techniques of metalwork I've learned over the years. And also trying to use create social media and participate in art markets and apply for things and do all the things that you have to do. I don't really like to identify as a welder or blacksmith because neither label accurately encompasses all the processes I draw from. I mostly think of forging and welding as just tools in my tool belt. I'm constantly employing other skills in my work, including but not limited to soldering, brazing, casting, cold forming, tinning, machining, 3D rendering, plasma cutting, etc. As my work has evolved, I've become increasingly interested in the inclusion of color, and that has developed into furthering my knowledge of other material processes and disciplines. I have learned how to cast and press my own cement tiles, enamel colors onto forged kitchen utensils. Shout out to Rachel Kettinger, who I hadn't met before this weekend, but she was incredibly helpful and gracious over the internet when I was trying to learn. And most recently, I've begun working in stained glass as well, as an added element to some light fixtures. Okay, and so here's some enameled kitchen utensils or serving wares. This is some candle holders, and then on the other side, it's got this pair with a couple little feet on them, different designs. This is the oil lamps, and this was a tiled table. This is my first lamp, stained glass lamp that I made. It's also in the gallery. And this was my second one. And okay, skip that. Sorry. This is my shop now. I share it with 2 other people where I work every day. We each have our own little bays for personal tools and projects, and we share the greater space communally. The picture on the right is looking into my little area, and then the other one's looking out of it. It has grown a lot in the last few years, as my practice has too. Fear is a factor that plagues us all, but I hope that me standing here today is proof that even if you're just faking it, it is working and you can overcome. So yeah, I guess to end on that, I was just thinking about things, and I like to believe that a large part of being a craftsman requires a certain humbleness and a relinquishing of control to the roller coaster of uncertainty involved with establishing yourself. In my short experience, I am also understanding the longevity of the process might be the greatest hurdle in itself. No one can really ever know what to expect, and no 2-person stories are the same, though some of ours are oddly similar. Either way, I know that I'm at the beginning of my process, at the beginning of taking myself seriously, of thinking about the possibilities available to me, wanting to reach for them, and thinking that I can. So thank you.